The egg looks silent, still, passive, just waiting. But that's one of the biggest misunderstandings in biology, because the egg isn't passive at all. It's a fortress, armed with chemical defenses so sophisticated that some scientists call it one of the most selective cells in the human body. Before any sperm can get close, the egg is already watching, already sensing, already preparing. It can detect foreign molecules. It can block the wrong sperm. It can reject damaged DNA. It can shut down an entire wave of competitors within seconds. And once the right sperm finally makes contact, the egg doesn't just open the door. It explodes with a burst of calcium, a shockwave, triggering a chemical transformation across its entire surface, hardening its shell, locking out every other sperm instantly. A biochemical force field, a final defense against chaos. Most people imagine fertilization as a race where the fastest wins. But the truth is far more elegant. The egg chooses. The egg decides. The egg protects itself with layers of chemical intelligence evolved over millions of years. Today, we're going to explore this hidden defense system. The molecular armor, the electrical reactions, the enzymes, the signaling networks that keep the egg safe and ensure that only one sperm succeeds. This isn't just reproduction, it's strategy, it's chemistry, it's survival. Let's go inside. To understand the egg's chemical defense system, we first need to understand the battlefield it lives on. When ovulation happens, the egg is released from the ovary into the fallopian tube, a narrow, fluid-filled corridor where millions of sperm may eventually arrive, but only a tiny fraction ever reach this point. The egg isn't sitting alone. It's surrounded by multiple protective layers. The corona radiata, a cloud of supportive cells. The zona pellucida, a tough glycoprotein shell. The oolemma, the egg's actual cell membrane, the final gateway. Each layer has its own biochemical role. Before any sperm can even touch the egg, it must navigate through enzymes, signaling molecules, and structural barriers that act like checkpoints. The zona pellucida, for example, isn't just a shell, it's a sensor. It can detect proteins on the sperm's surface, distinguish species, reject damaged or incompatible sperm, and trigger chemical reactions that slow down or eliminate weak contenders. Meanwhile, inside the egg, ion channels and receptors sit waiting, like silent switches, ready to respond the instant a sperm binds. And the remarkable part? The egg is completely inactive until the right signal arrives. One correct protein match on the sperm triggers the egg's entire defense cascade, a wave of calcium, enzyme activation, and molecular locks that harden the zona pellucida within seconds. This is the egg's version of closing the gates, a final block that prevents multiple sperm from entering and ensures genetic stability. Everything is chemical. Everything is timed. Everything is precise. Now that we've mapped out the territory, the layers, the checkpoints, the waiting signals, we can zoom deeper into the molecular weapons themselves. The calcium explosion, the cortical granule release, the zona hardening reaction, the chemical rejection of all other sperm. That's where the true brilliance of the egg's defense system comes alive. If we zoom down to the molecular level, the egg's defense system stops looking like biology and starts looking like strategy. Everything begins the moment the first sperm touches the zona pellucida, the protective shell made of glycoproteins ZP1, ZP2, and ZP3. 1. The first password check. ZP3 recognition. ZP3 is the egg's ID scanner. When a sperm binds to ZP3, the egg isn't impressed by speed, it's checking compatibility. If the sperm's surface proteins don't match the egg's species or quality criteria, the reaction stops right there. No match, no entry. 2. The acrosome reaction, melting the gate. If the match is correct, the sperm performs the acrosome reaction, a controlled release of enzymes from its cap-like acrosome. These enzymes digest a tiny pathway through the zona pellucida. But here's the key. The egg can sense the strength and timing of this reaction. Weak or incomplete acrosome reactions get chemically ignored. Only a fully competent sperm can continue forward. 3. The final gate, ulema binding. Once a single sperm reaches the egg's true membrane, the ulema, a special protein called Juno on the egg pairs with a sperm protein called izumo1. This is the master key, the final handshake. Once Juno recognizes izumo1, the egg finally activates. And this is where everything changes. 4. The calcium explosion. The moment fusion begins, the egg triggers a massive calcium wave, a literal chemical shockwave travelling across the cell in seconds. This calcium surge activates cortical granules, tiny packets waiting just under the membrane. 5. Cortical granule release, locking the gates. These granules dump enzymes into the zona pellucida, cutting apart ZP2 receptors and cross-linking the shell. The zona hardens, the entry points seal. The sperm-binding proteins get chemically disabled. This is called the zona reaction, the egg's most powerful anti-polyspermy defense. 6. Juno disappears. Within minutes, the egg actually sheds the Juno receptors from its surface. Even if another sperm reaches the egg, there are no more docking stations. One sperm, one chance. One successful fusion. All other sperm are now locked out chemically, permanently. This is the egg's molecular fortress, and the moment it fires at full power is nothing short of astonishing. That dramatic moment is exactly where we're going next. There's a moment, only a few seconds long, where the egg stops being quiet and unleashes one of the most dramatic chemical reactions in human biology. It happens the instant one sperm successfully binds and begins to fuse with the ulema. Not 2, not 5, 1. And that one contact triggers a chain reaction powerful enough to shut out every other sperm in the vicinity. The calcium shockwave. As soon as Juno and izumo1 lock together, the egg releases a massive wave of calcium ions from internal stores. This isn't a gentle ripple, it's a flash flood. A shockwave that races across the egg's entire surface in milliseconds. Under a microscope, the whole cell lights up. This surge is the egg's alarm system. Its way of saying, the door is closed. No one else gets in. The cortical granule burst triggered by the calcium wave. Thousands of cortical granules fuse with the membrane and release their contents outward. These granules contain enzymes specifically designed for defense. enzymes that clip apart sperm-binding proteins, enzymes that harden the zona pellucida, enzymes that seal any remaining openings. Think of it like pouring quick-setting cement over every possible entry point. The zona transforms. Within seconds, the zona pellucida, once soft and receptive, becomes a hardened biochemical shield. Sperm still trying to enter slam into a barrier that no longer recognizes them. Their receptors no longer match. The shell no longer melts. The path is chemically erased. Juno vanishes. As the final lock, the egg sheds all Juno proteins from its surface. Even if another sperm reached the membrane, there are no docking stations left. The gates are closed. The fortress is sealed. Polyspermy, which would destroy the embryo, is prevented with absolute precision. What looks like fertilization is actually a chemical battle, and the egg wins it in under a minute. Now that the defensive explosion is complete, the story shifts from protection to creation. It's time for the final reflection. When you step back from the egg's chemical defense system, something remarkable comes into focus. We often imagine the beginning of life as soft, delicate, almost fragile. But the truth is the very opposite. Life begins with precision, with strategy, with a cell that knows exactly what it must protect and how fiercely it must protect it. The egg doesn't just wait, it evaluates, it chooses. It defends itself through waves of chemistry older than humanity itself. The calcium explosion, the cortical granule burst, the rapid hardening of the zona pellucida, the disappearing Juno receptors. These aren't just reactions, they are decisions, split-second biochemical choices that ensure only one sperm succeeds, that the embryo begins with the correct number of chromosomes, that life starts with order instead of chaos. And maybe that's the poetic part. Before there is a heartbeat, before there is a brain, before there is even an embryo, there is intelligence. Not thinking, not consciousness, but a deeply engineered biological wisdom. A set of molecular rules evolution carved over millions of years to protect the very first moment of existence. The egg's defenses remind us that life doesn't begin with vulnerability. It begins with strength, with boundaries, with gates that close the moment the right opportunity arrives. A single cell, surrounded by layers of chemistry, carrying the knowledge of how to guard itself and how to let life begin. Small, silent, invisible to the eye, but powerful enough to shape the future of an entire human being. That's the quiet miracle hidden inside the very first second of life. A defense system so precise that it makes every successful beginning feel almost meant to be.